think one of the hottest topics we have nowadays, and I'm busy over in the western region promoting the growth of biomass, talking about the Lance Warden generation plant there and using biomass. I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I usually use with Mascoma and other projects like the Northern Michigan University project that they're going to be burning 144,000 tons of biomass. Biomass is becoming a big thing. Not only biomass, but I believe we just had an energy summit and went over a lot of that information. So this, I believe today will be a nice follow-up. They asked me kind of at the last minute if I'd moderate it, and I just said, yeah, if I get a chance to talk. And they said, well, if we have to, we'll give you a few minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to, and again, we don't have any bio introductions, so I'm going to ask our guests, you have them on your agenda or your schedule, and I'm just going to ask them, like Rob, you're going to be our first presenter, and tell us about your company and what you got going on, and then after we get through, and I believe ask questions as we go along, if that's all right with our panelists. So with that, I'm going to introduce Rob Reid. Rob is the president of NSI Technologies from Ontario, Canada.
Founded NSI Technologies about 9 years ago to provide utility engineering services in Northern Ontario primarily. Since then, we've grown and we're doing some work in Alberta, and we're also looking at doing some work in Michigan. We haven't started that yet. The company has grown over the last 9 years from about 2 people initially to 13 today. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a minute. I'm also involved in our community through the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the immediate past president, so I just finished up my term as the president of the Chamber, and I'm on the board of the Economic Development Corporation. So I've been quite involved in the various economic development activities that have happened in Sioux, Ontario over the last 10 years or so. The interesting thing is to see really how connected the two communities are. I've always been amazed. I moved to Sault Ste. Marie about 15 years ago, and I was really impressed with how well the Michigan and Ontario in this area work so well together. So it's great to see this kind of conference coming together, and again, I really appreciate having the opportunity to come here today. I'm primarily just going to give you a bit of a a bit of a talk about what NSI does and some of the projects we've been involved in, and how the economic development policies of the province of Ontario and the city of Sault Ste. Marie have really helped to develop the alternative energy marketplace. So, NSI, as I said, we founded in 2003. We do primarily what we call utility engineering, which is essentially the interface between the customer and the utility. So we do a lot of connection type work, and over the last 3-4 years, we've done a lot of project development and design work on the renewable side, and I'll get into that. The other thing that we do in Ontario that I believe is maybe a little different than in Michigan, revenue metering is federally regulated, and then within each province there's some specific regulations. So we do a lot of revenue metering work as well, both on the wholesale side and on the retail side. So between engineering and metering, those are our two key strengths. We're licensed in Ontario, and we're also licensed in Alberta to provide professional engineering services. Our office, we've got a very diverse team. I'm quite proud of the people we have, and primarily everyone's located in Sault Ste. Marie, but we do have 3 sort of satellite offices where we've done some project work, and we have some people spread around the province. So as I said, we have 13 people, 6 engineers. I actually have an aerospace engineering degree, and the rest of the guys are primarily electrical, but we do have one mechanical guy that does our thermal projects when we get into biomass and natural gas generation projects. And within that, we also have quite a network within Ontario that we draw on when we need to for project work or other activities. Excuse me. So the one thing that I really wanted to talk about in terms of economic development are what kind of drivers do you need to make energy projects come together. And at the state or provincial level, we definitely need some policies that support this kind of thing, as renewable technologies are emerging. They primarily need some kind of support to get them going and to create that initial industry. So in Ontario, we had the Renewable Energy Standard Offer program, which then became the feed-in tariff program, which you may have heard about, as it's the more sort of popular version of the program. And then we also had a combined heat and power standard offer program that was primarily focused on biomass and biogas type applications. And so once you have that overall policy framework for enabling this kind of technology development, at the local level, you really need to have the local government support. So as an example, in Sault Ste. Marie, I'm trying to remember which council, I think it was probably 4 years ago, they passed a resolution to include renewable energy generation technologies in all zones within the municipality. So if you want to put a solar panel on your roof of your house, or you want to put a utility scale solar development in a farmer's field, those are all permitted uses within the zoning. So it makes that part of the process extremely straightforward and really helps to enable that kind of technology implementation. Accessible engineers and contractors, of course, you need people that have the training and the capability and in some ways the creativity to make these kind of projects come together. And we've been very fortunate that we've been able to assemble in my own sense, I've been very fortunate to assemble a team that has that kind of capability. At the same time, within Ontario, we've been quite fortunate that we've already had a lot of utility training that could be drawn upon. Viable technologies, I think, is the other key piece. That there's lots of ideas out there in terms of how to capture solar to create electricity. There's lots of different wind turbine ideas, but having something that's commercially available and can be financed by a reputable organization is a bit of a stretch in the early days, and it's becoming much more commonplace. But that was definitely one of the key challenges early on. And the whole smart grid, I'm not sure how much you've heard about that, but it's the idea of taking the electricity system and adding intelligent devices to it so that you can make real-time decisions about production and consumption and have a better utilization of the resource, as opposed to historically where we had a much more coarse view of supply and demand. The other thing that I think is very interesting about that is the idea that you can now put so much more in the hands of the actual consumer and be able to make your own decisions about how you're going to consume energy and whether you're going to produce energy yourself, in terms of having technology available to you at the residential level. So I think that whole area is really starting to grow. It's going to be very interesting over the next few years. And then finally, accessible financing. At the end of the day, if you want to build a $100 million project, you need to find somebody with a good portion of that wants to invest. And again, we're finding that the advances primarily in Europe, there's a lot of European banks that are more than happy to invest in North American energy projects, and it's been sort of slow for those, at least from my experience on the Canadian side, it's been slow for the Canadian institutions to catch up and participate in those kind of projects. So it's not hard to find, frankly, in my opinion. It's not hard to find financing, but it's hard to find Canadian financing. Just a little bit about people that we've worked with and projects that we've been involved with. Just as in terms of scope, we've really seen a huge increase in the number of renewable projects in Ontario in the past 3 years. And as a result, us as a a small firm in rural northern Ontario, we're pretty much working throughout Ontario, and it's been quite interesting to see how much the technology is allowing that to happen. So we can end up doing work, and frankly, we never actually meet our client. We do everything remotely, electronically, and it's been quite an interesting experience for me. From an import-export kind of perspective, we've done work with German companies, we've done work with companies from France, we've done work with companies from California, and that's all been enabled by the technology in this area, allowing that to happen. On the engineering side, we've designed over 200 megawatts of solar installations over the last couple of years, and that's a large number in terms of the marketplace in Ontario, so we've been very fortunate to be involved with those projects. On the wind side, we've done some small work, but we're just about to do a 25 megawatt project that's just north of Sault Ste. Marie. And on the cogen side, we've been working on a natural gas plant in Alberta for about a year now, and we're doing everything from the permitting side to get the financing in place so that that project can be built. And that again has been a very unique look at the new types of turbine technology that's available, and how that is much more environmentally friendly than it used to be. Just to give you a sense of where we've some of the scope of things that have resulted from this push for renewable energy in Ontario. We have 6 10 megawatt solar sites in Sault, Ontario. We did all of the development work as well as the electrical design for those sites, and they use 1,000, got a typo here, 1,000 volt DC collector system, and they're the only sites approved by the Electrical Safety Authority in Ontario to operate at that level. In Ontario, that's considered a high voltage, and there's a whole a different set of rules for that kind of installation. And from an innovation perspective, we were able to find solutions to those issues and allow those projects to proceed when many others didn't believe that they would happen. And it's really a testament to Starwood Energy Group as well as Q-Cells International that are the owners of the project that we were able to overcome those hurdles. As some background there, Starwood is an equity fund from Connecticut, and Q-Cells is a panel manufacturer primarily from Germany, but they've got a construction company based out of California that does project implementation. Elson Environmental is a tire recycling plant that's been in operation for about a year now, I believe, in Sault Ste. Marie. They use microwaves to break down tires into their base components. So they have the environmental aspect of reusing or recycling tires, and at the same time, the oil that's produced through their process allows them to generate electricity, and their entire plant becomes self-sufficient from an energy standpoint. And there's actually a net benefit of energy output that they then sell to the grid. So by recycling tires, they not only have a couple of streams from the carbon black and the steel that they can sell, but they also allow themselves to be self-sufficient from an energy standpoint. From an international perspective, we worked with Siemens out of Germany. Many of you have hopefully heard of Siemens. They're one of the largest electrical equipment manufacturers in the world. And they wanted to develop some projects in Ontario, so we provided them with the engineering services they needed from a local Ontario code and regulation perspective. And we did the entire project with their German business unit. They came to Ontario once to have our initial kickoff meeting, and then the rest of the 6-7 month project was done remotely. And then finally, the Lethbridge Energy Center is a 130 megawatt natural gas simple cycle power plant in southern Alberta that we've been developing, and it's been very interesting to see the difference between the Ontario market and the Alberta market in order to get the project financed, but at the same time, the implementation of that technology, the GE engines that are being used, without getting into too much detail about it, they're just they're more efficient, and they're more environmentally responsible from an emissions standpoint than they used to be, and it's very neat to see that progression of that technology as well. I'm really hoping there's going to be some questions. Again, from an economic development standpoint, now that we've got some history with this, looking back, what have we seen in the local economy? Well, from an engineering sector perspective, we've obviously grown. There's a couple of other large companies, Stantec and Hatch, that are doing a significant amount of renewable energy work in Ontario. They've definitely grown in those areas. On the construction and maintenance side, there's been a large boom in terms of projects. So many of these solar and wind projects are very have a large civil component, so lots of foundations and large amounts of land being covered by the technology. So there's been 4 local companies. Now we have 3 companies in Sault Ste. Marie that focus strictly on solar installations, and we had 0 probably at least 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And another large construction company, PCL, has created a renewables division to take advantage of these projects. So a company that's historically been into large commercial construction has now created a division just to look after renewables. So there's been a lot of development in that sense. On the manufacturing side, again in Sault Ste. Marie, we've been fortunate enough to have a solar panel manufacturer, Helene. They've been in operation for about 1.5 years, and there's inverter suppliers that have also developed operations in Ontario. Excuse me. And then as a result, you see these clusters starting to emerge. And I don't know about I don't remember the exact time frame, but the city of Sault Ste. Marie proclaimed Sault Ste. Marie as the alternative energy capital of North America. And when you look at all the things that are going on, there's some substance to that. Whether it's exactly true or not, I'm not here to defend, but you just see that start to happen, where you get manufacturing developing, you get service sectors developing, and the whole thing really comes together. So I really believe that there's been a large impact from the alternative energy sector in our area, and that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much.